Now, I forgot my glasses. I can hardly bloody see anything. I'm going to try and get this done. I was asked to go through the poem The Searchers by Tracy K Smith. Um, it's not one of the six poems that I selected to teach. Don't forget, with any of these poets, you probably need to, the minimum number of poems you need to kind of have a good understanding of is four. And then I always recommend, I always do six. And there's no right poem to pick. Whatever combination your teacher wants to teach, that's fine. Um, and generally, you're looking for, a poem that you have relatively straightforward understanding of because you're more likely to recall the details of the poem than when you're writing under pressure. Anyway, beyond that, this is the poem I don't normally teach, but it is a good poem. It's quite complicated, and I know it's off-putting for a lot of students. I think Tracy K. Smith probably is a little bit obscure, sometimes abstract in her style, and that might be off-putting. But anyway, you don't mind. So it's called The Searchers, and the name of the poem is a reference to a film, very famous film from the 1950s. It's a John Wayne movie. John Wayne was a big movie star, and it's a Western. And it's about a guy called Ethan Edwards. That's his name there. I'll just get the old pen going. Ethan Edwards. And the story of essentially is that Ethan Edwards is called upon by his family to go and search for his niece, Debbie. The movie is set in the Old West. I think it's in New Mexico, somewhere in the borderlands anyway, with Mexico. And the story is that there's an Indian attack, for want of a better term. The Westerns, cowboys and Indians. There's a Comanche tribe attack on Debbie's farm homestead, and she's kidnapped as a young girl, as a child. And Ethan is tasked with finding her. So the movie is about him searching for her. And I think that what Tracy K. Smith really is doing in this poem is playing with the idea of searching and about how sometimes you search for things so hard and then you find them and it doesn't really bring any contentment. So I think that the whole setup of the poem is figurative. The opening kind of half of the poem is relatively straightforward. It's just describing the story of the movie. And then the second half is kind of deeply philosophical. And for me, this poem fits in with. I mean, I think of Smith, Tracy K. Smith. I always think of like there's very personal poems about her family. So those It's Not and Joy, I teach them. There's those poems about slavery and the residual impact of slavery and discrimination and her experience as an African American. So the ones I teach are Ghazal and The Greatest Personal Privation. And then there's these kind of deeply kind of philosophical, thought-provoking kind of musy poems in which she thinks about the meaning of life. And the two I normally teach, well, that I do teach, that fit into that category, are the Museum of Obsolescence and what is it called now? It'll come to me in a second. Um, the Universe's Primal Scream. Sorry, brain fart. Can't bloody see anything. So this would fit in with that category. By the way, with Smith, if she comes up, I'm expecting that phrase, a variety of thematic concerns, because that's certainly the case with her. So, okay, let's have a quick look. It's a narrative poem in which she tells the story of the movie. He wants to kill her for surviving. Great opening line, isn't it? It's a great opening line. It's dramatic, it's engaging, it's thought provoking, it provokes curiosity. And it makes us think about the character of Ethan, the he in that sentence. For the language she spits, the way she runs, clutching her skirt as if life pools there. So the contempt that Ethan has in the story of the movie, it takes him years and years and years to eventually find Debbie. And by the time he finds her, she's a grown woman and she's become assimilated into the tribe that kidnapped her. So she's become, if you like, one of them. And because she's one of them, he despises her. And that brings up all sorts of ideas about racism and about cultural imperialism and about um, bigotry. That's all there. So to hate somebody because they're different is certainly there. Interesting phrasing, dramatic opening, great story. And then there's the image of what he does. Instead, he grabs her, puts her on his saddle, rides back into town where faces she barely remembers smile into her fear. I really think that's very, very clever, that juxtaposition of smiling into her fear. So there's the drama. Ethan is like the macho man, the epitome of American strength. He wants to kill her, but he doesn't kill her because he's a decent man. And he grabs her and throws her on the saddle. He brings her back into her community, and she is a figure of fear there. She's afraid because she was only a child when she was taken, and her whole family, the people that she regarded as her family, have all been killed in her rescue. And when she comes back into the European white community, she's she's an outsider. Okay, she's afraid, but the people are also afraid of her. They're afraid of her because she's representative of something that they're terrified of. They're representative of the fact that they're what they understand to be right is not permanent. And then we get this line: smile into her fear with questions and the impossible wish to forget. Now that's I haven't got that highlighted, but it's a really important line. The repetition of wish is important there. And then this idea of wanting to forget. Forget what? Well, maybe forget that, you know, she was taken away and she was, experienced whatever she experienced, that she has brought shame onto her family by, surviving, by assimilating, by being like the savages as the Indians are viewed by the white settlers. So they want to forget that. They don't want to be reminded of that because it makes them feel uncomfortable. So again, it's bringing up issues to do with, like, when we look at people who've been through trauma, and we don't like to discuss that trauma because it makes us feel uncomfortable, and we're more interested in our own well-being than their well-being. There's loads going on there, loads to discuss. We don't know exactly what Tracy K Smith is thinking, nor does she want us to. She's telling this story in a way which is thought-provoking, and whatever our response to that is valid. But then we get to the core of the poem. And the core of the poem it begins here. This is the cut-off point of the poem for me, this section here, okay? So from here down, from here down, we get the core of the poem. And I'm going to go through it really, really quickly. She asks, what does living do to any of us? That's a great question. And that's a philosophical question. It's about the nature of life. Why do we grip it, she asks. Why do we hang on to life? And then she uses this brilliant, brilliant, brilliant imagery. Hang on. It's a simile. Hang on. As if it's the ribs of a horse past commanding. A beast that big, a beast that big could wreck us easily, could rise up on two legs or kick its back end up and send us soaring. We might land at any moment, like cheap toys, another little simile. So the image is there of life being like a bucking bronco, a wild animal that could destroy us at any point. That life is not comfortable, that life is not safe, that life is not secure, that we are always subject to violent changes. Like Debbie was just a child getting on with her life, and then she's stolen away. And then her uncle Ethan, he was a war hero, and he's given this duty, and his whole life becomes consumed by it. And then when he finds her, he's disgusted by her because she's not what he expects her to be. And here, the philosophical observation by the poet is to do with the meaning of life. We have to accept that life is never as we expect it to be, that life is full of the unexpected, like a bucking bronco, and that we hold on, but that we don't hold on expecting security. It's not there. And then she comes to what I think is the most important part of the poem. There's always a chimney burning in the mind, a porch where the rocker still rocks though empty. And then this is the third quote I would highly recommend you learn. Why do we insist our lives are our lives? Now that's the best line in the poem. I think the image of hanging onto the horse is the best image in the poem. And when I'm saying number two there, what does living do to any of us? Why do we grip it? Hang on as if it's the ribs of a horse past commanding. That's the second quote I recommend we learn. The first quote is the opening line. He wants to kill her for surviving. Great line. But then you get down here and you have this thoughtful question. Why do we insist our lives are ours? And it's an unusual, open-ended question. She doesn't have an answer. But I think what she's thinking about is control. What she's thinking about is the idea that I think, my name is Paul, hello, how are you? And I think I'm in control of my life. My life is mine. But it's not. We're at the whims of fate. We're at the mercy of unexpected events that, can come and completely change our lives. I'm a cyclist. I cycle in and out of work. Something could happen on the bike on the way home. We are all subject to the whims of change. We have this plan, right? When I'm 20, my life's going to be like this. Then when I'm 30, my life's going to be like this. When I'm 40, and this is the way the world should be. This is the way people should be. But none of that is true. And the poet is trying to think about how when and she's using the story of the searchers, the search for the meaning of life, which isn't necessarily going to end the way we expect it to end. Ethan goes out to search for Debbie, to be the hero, to save her. But when he saves her, he's not happy, and either is she. It's not what they expected. And that's where the image of the movie, or the inspiration of the movie, ties into the actual real concern of the poem. The poem is not about the movie, The Searchers. The poem is about our experience of living life. It's about our search for contentment, something which is almost intangible and maybe impossible to find. And then she asks this question, and she uses the landscape of the Old West as a metaphor. She says, look at the frontier. So that's as the America spread out west. It didn't resist. Gave anyone the chance to plant shrubs, dig wells, watched, not really concerned with whether it belonged to him or to him. Either way, the land went on living, dying. What else could it choose? I really like that. Sometimes you guys ask me to cover poems, and I don't like doing it because I don't particularly like the poem. But I enjoyed this, having to go back and think about it. Because, of course, what she's talking about is, look, this is life, right? Right? Here we go. This is life. Life is living and life is dying. We're born. Yeats calls it, whatever is begotten, born and dies. We're born, we live, we die. We don't really have control over a lot of things in the middle. And like the Old West, maybe we should be a little bit less resisting. Maybe we should be a little bit more accepting. Maybe we should be a little bit more understanding of the vagaries of life, of the changes that are a permanent part of the deal. That is the deal. That life is something that we are not always in control of. And if we do that, then maybe, if we accept that our lives are not our lives, then maybe we can understand more about what living does to us. And maybe we can accept that life is something like the ribs of a horse past commanding, a beast that big which could wreck us easily. I think it's extremely thought-provoking. I think it's extremely clever. Took me a bit of time to work it out, but I think I have it now. I hope you found that useful.